Hi friends, this is Chris with Josephine's Design. I'm back again with the part 2 of what we've been doing on the property. So we've talked about our gardens, we've talked about our inside gardens, our proposed next step gardens within the house and outside, our patio garden. I think I mentioned that. And by the way, we are water lining all of those with drip lines, hopefully this weekend while it's cool weather. I've never done that. My husband has because he uses them out on in his little mini orchards, and he's a genius at it. So I'm going to try to learn the process on the patio garden, and I'm going to get him to do the bigger garden. So, and he's gotten all the materials. So, okay, so there's that. Now, I've also shared that even though I just found this book yesterday or day before, clearly I've been thinking about hydroponics for a long time. I also discussed me wanting to go more the hydroponic route. We'll see how it works out. But I do watch a lot of different, homesteading type videos here on YouTube. And when we first moved to this property, we had goats that we milked, and we used the milk, and we drank the milk, and then we had a friend who had a milk cow, so we made our cheese. We did everything. We ground the beans and the grains to make our flours, our corn to make our cornbread, and we've done all of that. Right now, getting up and running, I did not want to have to, because my grinder I gave to one of my kiddos. They gave it away. I was able to get a hand grinder, but one of my husband's friends said he had multiple grinders, so I'm going to reach out to him and see if he's got an electric grinder I can buy from him, because we love them, and if he's got too many and he wants to sell them, I will gladly buy them from him. But so we're working on what works now. Because we got a late start to gardening, we're adjusting things. Now, a few other things I've got in the dehydrator. I did tell you I had kale and spinach in one in the oven that I put on dehydrating, and it's a Breville. I think I said that, but if not, it's a Breville. And I, of course, bought it on sale with coupons, you know me. But I also have a dehydrator, and in that is lots of green beans. We don't know. We have never been able to get green beans to grow on the property. But if we can't, I want to at least have a stash of green beans in my backup pantry. So what I dehydrate right now, anything we dehydrate, we can always use in a soup. We can hydrate it, use it in a recipe, things like that. There was a joke, I think my husband was laughing when I showed him all my things I was dehydrating. He goes, yeah, was it on the middle where they said you took like a 6-pound bag of grapes and dehydrated into like a handful of raisins, and it wasn't even worth a box of raisins, and I was like, yeah, when a box of raisins is so inexpensive. And I said, yeah, no, we're not doing that for that reason. And he started laughing. He goes, I know we were doing it. But anyways, and we're also using our food saver for plastic bag storage. We'll put things like that in it. I do know a lot of people who put their greens in plastic bag storage, and I like jars. It's easier to see on the shelf. You're able to grab and use and things like that. I also have backup flour, sugar, things like that we had on the property already, and I will vacuum seal those also with that food saver. I did pay for the 2 wide mouth and the regular mouth lid adjustments to dehydrate on mason jars. So that was something I was doing. But the hydroponic garden, everything I'm doing right now, I am taking a lot of pictures along the way. I will try to get them up on my healthylivingforhim.wordpress.com website that I've had for 15 years, 14 years, anyways. And I've had it in different web hosting facilities, so I don't have the whole lineage of it, but it's something that when we moved to the property, we did all these things. So a lot of people are saying, well, what are you using? So I have this book. I also use the internet and YouTube like crazy. Growing garden seeds, these are things that we've had for a long time. We have a clay soil here, so how do you get things to grow? Story is a great resource. I don't even know if they're still in, I'm sure they're still in business. Cold fruit and vegetable storage. So I'm learning ways to store. We are planting sweet potatoes because you can grow sweet potatoes right now. So we're going to do 3 huge buckets, they're called potato sack type buckets, where at the bottom you open the flap and then you can, pick your produce, pick your potatoes, without having to dig through the whole 5-gallon or 7-gallon, whichever size I ended up getting. So my daughter and son-in-law had extra sweet potatoes, and she was like, I have seed potatoes that are supposed to be here. They have not arrived. I went to the post office yesterday. I got to call them today. There's several things missing, which they're just inundated. It's not their fault. And I got the person who may or may not put enough time into it. And I knew, yesterday, finally realized she's doing it fast, and that's okay. I get it. But I need to get a hold of my guy that I usually talk to, and I'll talk to him today and then go in on Friday, or talk to him Friday morning, go in Friday afternoon. But I'm also using the square foot gardening method I'm not going to lay down the grid, but we do have 6 rounds, which you kind of just work around it. My husband wants to really pack things tightly, and I don't, for the simple fact that we do have rattlesnakes. So, he was like, oh, that's a good point. You can't walk in there without, like, a stick and poking everything first. So, yeah, anyways, it's going to be a long stick. But anyway, so, but this is another great resource tool that I bought when we moved here. I also have this from when we moved here. So you can see we've gone through the property of being here over 15 years. We've done starting our seeds indoors or start lanes. And so, but I'm also going to use hydroponics more with that. So, anyways, and I shared that on the previous. And then we also just have this in our arsenal of small scale farming. And then I have some more in the other room on farming in Texas and, and small scale Texas gardens, things like that. Fruit and vegetables, all that kind of good stuff. And I also have a book, and I don't have it with me here right now, and it is outrageously expensive on Amazon right now. It's clearly out of print. It's called the Have More Plan. But if you go on eBay, you can buy a PDF of it for $2.99, and that's what I did. And we do have the book, because I couldn't find the book, and I was just frantically thinking, oh my goodness, did we loan it to somebody? Did the kids take it? Where's it at? So, and my oldest daughter was so cute, because they're really setting up things like this, and looking to buy property and raise meat goats and, meat chickens and all that kind of stuff, to help pay their bills. I mean, and to also have food for their family. So, and they have tons of vegetables. They have a Nigerian dwarf. They have 2 they just got in the last couple of weeks, and they're both have been bred. One for sure is pregnant, and the other one we don't know yet. So, but they want milk from them. And even though they're miniatures, you can milk them, and you can drink the milk, and it's all good. And the babies, there's always plenty for the babies. We used to do that here on the property. But we did not. We had Nigerian dwarfs, and we had one that was like our pet. I called him Donut, and Donut was allowed to go wherever Donut wanted to go. She was our baby. But we had brought in some other goats that had for milk, and they had carried a disease, and because of that we had to get rid of every goat off the property. And so it was really sad. But Donut went to a petting zoo with a couple of others after we quarantined it for a season to make sure it was okay, and that it was not something that was communicable to adults or children. It was only communicable to other goats. So anyways, but we did quarantine her for a while. Okay, living on a few acres. The Have More Plan is a lot of that. This is from like 1970s. And I think it's funny. It's been signed by a congresswoman. It just cracks me up. Or I don't know if that's a man or a woman, but it looks like that's Pam, but then it looks like Palm. So I don't know. I have to look that up. I haven't. But it cracks me up because I grew up in the 70s. So a lot of these pictures, at first I thought it was older, but it's not. And there's just things in here like we don't have, trees to cut down, and we don't have, we're not raising animals for food, except for chickens to have eggs. That's it. So, and we have ducks and chickens and geese and a couple of guineas now, which I'm so thrilled. They're my favorites. And really the geese that my husband does, I think their names are Desi and Lucy. My husband names all of them. He's so cute. He's done that from the beginning. And they'll talk like, oh, this is from, Casanova's, a rooster years ago. That's one of his, except for 2 years ago, our we almost had everything wiped out due to raccoons when we were taking our daughter to a poli-sci type camp, so in Tennessee. But anyways, long story short, you know, we do eat my husband likes to eat goose eggs, and he loves duck eggs, and I don't like them, but they're great for baking. They make everything very fluffy, so if you have an opportunity, those are great. He always candles before he puts them in the mix, and all of that. So he doesn't, I don't think he has an incubator, and I've been looking at incubators to get him or to make one. But these are resources and tools that I have used over the years. These are not the only ones. These are just ones I have. So you can YouTube. I mean, when we moved here, those things weren't available. I mean, I could read blogs, and that was about it. So, and then we had to talk to friends who were experienced in this area. So, you know, books were invaluable. And of course, we're a family of readers. So, of course, we read. So, all right, now, there's one thing I wanted to share with you before I move to the next thing, and it is sprouting. So I talked about how you sprout microgreens to get essentially little, like alfalfa sprouts and things like that you can get at the grocery store. Sunflower sprouts. Sunflower sprouts are fantastic. I really love onion sprouts, but my onion seed was bad. It had gotten put in a place where the seeds got overheated, so the chickens get to eat them. They ate the seeds. So nothing goes to waste, though we are so vigilant. I'm hyper vigilant to not waste food. So that's why we're dehydrating. If something starts to go bad and I don't think I can cook with it quick enough, I dehydrate it. And then I save it for later. So the one thing I am going to share with you that is fantastic. So because of my GI tract issues, I have a hard time eating almonds. Almonds are so good for us. I can drink almond milk. I can have, you know, all variations of it. I can use almond meal. But there was one thing that I was taught years ago, and I went to lots of different nutrition classes, was you can sprout almonds. How do you sprout almonds? You literally take a jar. Here, I'll just use this as an example. Let me scoot this out of the way. I want to change that out because I still have one more thing in the stack here to talk to y'all about, but let me just rearrange the stack. So pretend this is an empty jar. You literally fill it like maybe half to 3/4 full of, I would say half, of almonds. And I use it in a half-gallon jar. I always do a half-gallon when I sprout almonds. And I just let them sit overnight in filtered water. So they've soaked. So in anything you sprout, you usually let it sit 8 to 10 hours to soak in water, whether that be microgreens or almonds or anything you're going to sprout. And then I drain the water off. I rinse them well, and then I put them in my dehydrator in the oven on dehydration. The thing is, what happens is the almonds, the protein levels rise in it somehow. I guess when it then begins to think it's a seed, it begins to start ramping up to grow a plant. And therefore, the protein levels and the nutrients are somehow amplified. And if you dehydrate on a very, 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 very low setting, you get what's interesting to me. So the almond is packed itself. So say this is the almond itself right here. You know, forget about this part, but this is the almond. Somehow when it soaks and then dehydrates, it somehow separates a little bit. And, you know, like most nuts, there's two halves. So what happens is that it puffs up. And then when it dehydrates, it becomes very light and crispy. For some reason, my body can handle that. So I allow myself 10 almonds a day, which is what is recommended for health. Am I perfect every day? No. But basically, a handful of almonds every day is really, sorry, I didn't mean to bump the camera, my apologies, is really good for us. And so I literally have a half-gallon right now, and I have a jar this size beside my chair, and that's my little treat in the evenings. So I've been sprouting almonds, and then dehydrating them, and then having this fantastic snack, which is my little vitamins and an almond. So anyways, now the last thing I wanted to share with you guys that I think it is worth sharing in light of food storage and things like that, and preparing for your family and setting up your pantries and things like that. So I've always had food storage. I grew up on the coast, and we went through a hurricane as a child, and we lost our house. Our house burnt down. They rebuilt it. Within a year, a hurricane came and knocked it down. So I remember my mom saying why she did some things. She always kept her freezer packed, so in case we lost electricity, it would, it wouldn't melt as quick. I mean, I don't know the science if that's true, but that was what I was taught. And I've always just done it. It was just natural inclination. And so when it comes to storing food, one of the things that years ago, when we were visiting a group that was very agriculturally minded, and so we learned a lot of techniques. I learned how to make soap. We learned how to make, anything from tamales on. It was really fun, we learned how to raise chickens. We learned how to harvest, honey and raise bees, and we learned, all these things. We learned things that I knew a lot from having grown up in Texas, and my dad was an incredible gardener. And then I also learned things. My uncles had ranches. I also was in FFA. So in FFA, Future Farmers of America, you tend to learn a lot as well. So I raised a lot of different animals in the city that now my oldest daughter and her husband are doing. It just cracks me up. Though I did not raise goats, I raised lambs. But I did raise rabbits and meat rabbits and show rabbits, and I did raise capons, which are male fixed roosters for meat production, and I showed them and sold capons. I also raised, I had ducks, I had lambs, I had all kinds of stuff. So, though they were more pets to me, they were essentially being, in theory, raised for meat production. So, or produced, production to be eaten. So, and yes, I know we don't eat any of that but our daughter and son-in-law do. And that's totally fine, and our son and daughter-in-law do. Though they eat more, they don't eat goat and they don't eat rabbit. But, we may come a point where they may eat that. Who knows? But, anyways, so one of the things that was shared with me was a great resource. So I want to share it with you. There are tons of websites that now talk about this. And years ago, I have the older version in there where the pages are falling out, all that kind of stuff. And I have like the part 1, part 2, and everything else, dinner in a jar, that kind of stuff. And I also have PDFs of different books because they're cheaper, or Kindles that are cheaper. But I don't want to pull all of that up for you. So I just want to share with you, there are resources for making a mix. Now you're probably thinking, what in the world is make a mix? So one of the things that my family was really hungry for were rolls. And yes, I could do homemade bread, make it into rolls, but I've changed my bread making process. So in the early portions, I was like, oh, I just don't know. And then I made tortillas, and I thought, oh, that's great. That's so easy. It is, and it's work, but it's still fine. And then I years ago tried to make biscuits. I stunk at it, and I thought, I'm going to try to make biscuits. So I got a couple of bags of Pioneer biscuit mix, and I'm not going to say I rolled them out perfectly and made perfect rounds, but I did do the spoon technique where it cut the dough. So it wasn't drop biscuits, and then I would pat them down. So they were almost like biscuits. And my husband was like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So I was like, okay. Well, then I thought, well, I'll just get the big boxes when I make my orders or look on Amazon. Bisquick, you can't find anywhere, or if you do, it's pretty expensive, at least down here. Hold on a second, I'm about to sneeze, so if I stop, I'm sneezing. And then there's the Pioneer. Hold on. Excuse me. Okay, so there's the Pioneer brand, and I want to think Pioneer's local if I'm thinking about it right, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and double check that. I know that King Arthur flour, we have a tool, we have a resource here. So anyways, but in Texas. So the Pioneer biscuits were great. And so yesterday I have been going through, marking my pages of the different mixes I want to make. So I went through and I've made cornbread mix before. That's really easy. We have a bucket of corn, dried corn that I grind, and then we make into cornbread. And then, but I wanted to make this one, which is whole wheat hot roll mix. Oh, I did not make that one yet. That one's still to come. But I did put together yesterday this quick mix, which makes biscuits. It makes tart, I don't know, crust. It makes breadsticks. It makes, you can add it to your cornbread mix, pancake mix, morning muffins, etc. But the only thing I don't use is shortening. I have never used shortening. So if any of you have any ideas of how to substitute in a pre-made mix a healthy version, let me know. But we did get vegetable shortening. And my husband, he was so cute, because this is the first round of them that I've made, the mixes. And he said, hey man, I'm willing to take a chance for biscuits. And I said, well, when I buy those mixes, I'm sure they have shortening in them, because I've never bought the mixes. And anyway, so he was like, I'm willing to give it a try. So he went to Walmart yesterday all garbed up with masks and I think gloves and wipes, and he got shortening. So what I did was I mixed everything together, all my dry ingredients, and now I'll run it through my food processor or blender, whatever way I can get it to blend down, or just cut it in with a dough, manual dough. But and it's already filled one of the largest of the containers for with my Tupperware, flour, sugar, how you do. You get those kind of container sets. So, but it's only 2 1/4 cups, so I think we'll be okay. So I'll let you know how that worked out. But I did go the buttermilk, powdered buttermilk, which was very hard to find, but I did get it, and I have a container of that in my fridge. Because we live in the country, if I don't have it in a jar and can't seal it, I keep it in my fridge, because we live in the middle of farm fields and cattle pastures, and when they turn the fields, you just get all kinds of stuff coming out of those fields. So, because they were hard, whenever they harvest at the end of the summer, early spring or early fall, and or plant and till, they till after they harvest, they'll till after it's died off. They'll kind of essentially mulch it back in, and then the base of the plants, and then they let it sit, and then they till again, and then they till when they're getting ready to plant. So every time they till that soil, we can have snakes, and just it's the way it is. So hence the reason for things like guineas and ducks, or geese, because they're the huge alarms that tell us, especially guineas, that they don't like snakes. I've literally had guineas on my roof of my house going berserk, and there was a little tiny baby rattler snake on the front porch, which is very dangerous. They have more venom, so I was able to take care of it. It was when we first moved here, and when I still tell that story to my sister, she's like, "You did that?" And I was like, "Yeah. Those are my kids. Are you kidding?" I don't think I want to take on a big snake, but yeah. So, and we've had big rattler snakes. And if you don't know, snakes tend to run in pairs, so be careful. If you're in an area where you could have poisonous snakes, be careful. So, the mom and the papa like to stay together, or whatever. And then I also put together a sweet, quick bread mix, which is 100% ready to go. So that's for things like muffins, pumpkin bread, banana bread, all those, cranberry bread. I've got cranberries in the freezer from last year's fall and, Christmas season. So I'll be baking things that are not seasonal and off times, because I put up things either by freezing, dehydrating, or eventually canning. And so these I was getting together yesterday, and those are my first 2 mixes. I'm going to play with those for a while. It's been a while since I've done these, so I'm going to see how those go. Again, for us, there's only 3 of us. When I had a lot of children, our son was gluten-free, so these were put on the shelf and weren't used and pulled back out until just recently. So I'm thrilled to have this resource. I have the old 1 and 2 that have just fallen apart. I will give the first one to my oldest daughter, but I'll keep the part 2 because it just has more recipes. And then also in the back of these books, you get the recipes that you add those mixes into. So it makes it really nice. Now, the other thing I've been doing is I have started fermenting. So I've got my half-gallon jars, and I have the fermenting lids, and I have my little tamper, that you pat it down with. I've got my kosher and pickling salt, depending on which way I want to go. And I did do my first half gallon. We have done sauerkraut in the past in a crock, but it failed. And I just wanted a smaller version of it. So I was able to, in a half gallon mason jar, to get 6 bags. And this is how lazy I am. So don't feel bad if you think, oh, I don't want to sit and chop, a whole jar full of cabbage, which I will next time. Because, I just put on YouTube on my phone and I watch it while I chat. I just literally prop it up on the window knobs. I have shutters and I can just watch it, while I cut and look out the window. But I got 6 bags of coleslaw, good sized coleslaw bags from the grocery store in there. And I also added in an onion and garlic and ginger, fresh ginger. So I gave it to my husband. My husband was at first going, ew, yuck, I'm not going to do that. Because he was thinking it was going to taste like pickles. And he liked sauerkraut. I thought that was funny. But, and my oldest was like, that is gross. I don't know why. We're not going to do that. Well, guess what? It's probiotics, because once it ferments, it's developing, probiotics. It's vegetable. It fills you. It's all that good stuff. Because if for any reason I can't get my probiotic supplement, I'm going to have several different things going. One of them is fermenting. I gave my husband, I made a big salad for lunch early this week or late last week, and I gave him a little bitty side of that, and he had to hurry because he had a conference call to make. And so I didn't get to put on it what I did for ours. My youngest daughter and I put, seeds and nuts on it, and you could even add a little bit of a sweet salad dressing if you don't like, because it's a brine. I literally ferment in a brine of salt and very picky about my salts, but you just layer it and you tamp it down with the little wooden tamper, and then you add another layer and you tamp it down till you start getting water flowing, because the salt and the tamping work together and it gets that water flowing. And then you put a little weight, or you can use if you have grapes, you can use a grape leaf. I have little glass weights, and I just put it down to the water covers everything. And I'm not going to say I was graded. I was then, once it was finished fermenting and you put it in a cool dry place, dark place on your or semi-dark, on your cabinet or whatever. And after a few days, I tasted it, decided that's a pretty good stopping point. I put them in my fridge, but I should have taken out the air, and I didn't do that. I mean, when you do it in a crock, you don't take out the air, but anyways. And I have little bitty lids with little bitty holes with a little bitty pump that you pump, you extract the air. And you could also use the food saver, but I had these others, so I was using those first. And then I've also have 3 different kombuchas going, and they're at different variations in the cycle. One is I created from an original plain kombucha itself. I got the SCOBY started by myself. One of them is very thick and one of them is not as thick. So I have 3 different kombuchas going, and that's another resource for probiotics. So I'm going to stop this video here. I feel like I've spent 1 and 2 talking about food storage and things that we can grow in our gardens, things that we can do. The one thing I will say, and I've encouraged everybody I speak to, the one way you build your pantry, besides these other tools that I'm talking about, you're probably saying, I don't grow anything. I've got a black thumb. I'm not good at, these things. Then I would say be really savvy in your shopping. Buy a bulk as much as you can. Find a way to store things. If you have a deep freeze, you can do a lot of deep freeze storage. And also, for me, I haven't been in a grocery store yet. Like my husband yesterday, he was picking up cornstarch. He said, okay, I've got cornstarch. I said, he picked up 1 and he goes, oh, you said 2. And I said, everything I said, if you can, pick up 2. 1 to use, 1 to store. Now, our grocery store he was going to pick up, they didn't have a 10-pound bag of flour. He said, well, honey, there's a sign here that says due to, being a good neighbor. And I said, then you only get 1. So If you need to, you make a trip every other day and you get